for explaining it.
Anytime, Nat.
Thanks, Alex. Here's Koch.
Well, the Treasurer will be swinging his support behind South Australian Premier Stephen Marshall today as the state election campaign gathers steam. Josh Frydenberg says $11.9 billion in support has been granted to the state during COVID. He'll be hoping that helps his own government's re-election chances as well, with the unofficial federal campaign well underway. There are some big issues to tackle for both sides, with the war of words over China prompting a dramatic fall in relations between the two countries, and also big changes to COVID restrictions. Treasurer Josh Frydenberg joins us live from Adelaide. Treasurer, you're there for the state election campaign to get Liberal Stephen Marshall over the line again. Economy top of everyone's agenda. Will you continue targeted support for industries still battling from COVID?
Well, the good news is here in South Australia, their economy is rebounding strongly. Koshi, the unemployment rate is at 4.8%. There's a record number of South Australians who are in work, in fact, more than at the start of the pandemic. And Stephen Marshall, as a Premier, has really led his state very strongly. And he's already announced, without Commonwealth support, additional economic packages for businesses across the state. This morning I'm addressing the Chamber of Commerce here in Adelaide. I'll be meeting with local businesses with the Premier later today. The Prime Minister was here just last week making an infrastructure announcement worth over $2 billion. But we've been with the people of South Australia, indeed the people right across the country, every step of the way during this pandemic.
Yep. Our relations with China. Are you worried the really aggressive rhetoric between the two countries, and particularly from your government, may be alienating Chinese-Australian voters?
Well, our issue is not with the Australian-Chinese community. More than 1 million strong and very valuable members of our community. Indeed, in my own electorate, I've got a large Australian-Chinese community, and they make a wonderful contribution. But we'll consistently defend the national interest when it comes to our national security. It might be on issues of critical infrastructure. It might be issues of cyber security. It's certainly speaking up about human rights abuses wherever they occur. Yep. And when it comes to Australia's most recent actions in relation to China, we make no apologies for that. When they take pretty reckless actions in shining a laser on one of our Defence Force planes, we've got to call that out, because that's completely wrong and dangerous.
Okay, and just finally on COVID, because the opening up of the economy is really important, the UK has announced overnight COVID restrictions will be scrapped altogether. No need for COVID cases to isolate, nothing. Just treat it like the flu. Are we falling behind, or do we need to quickly follow the UK standard?
Well, we're continuing to monitor the health situation here in Australia, and it's certainly improved. We've seen a peak in Omicron cases, we've seen a reduction in ICU and hospitalisation numbers, and as you know, people are getting back to work, and some of those workforce shortages, particularly the high levels of absenteeism, are starting to abate, and that's what I heard firsthand yesterday in Tasmania when I was visiting some major distribution centres. So I think this is the next step in the road, reducing the restrictions even further. And of course we'll continue to monitor the situation here in Australia, but we've already made some changes and we'll continue to make more as the medical advice comes in, Koshi.
Okay. Treasurer, appreciate your time. Thank you. Here's Nat.
Always a pleasure.